Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
One of today's most distinctive and memorable filmmakers is director Edgar Wright, a man known for his quirky and bold blockbusters. Wright has a tight team behind him in order to achieve his style of filmmaking, most notably his editors. Chris Dickens, Jonathan Amos, and Paul Matchliss are the three powerhouses behind the success of Wright's films. These include Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End, otherwise known as the Cornetto trilogy,
Do you want anything from the shop?
Cornetto.
as well as Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Baby Driver. All of these films contain fast-paced action, levels of hilarity,
Bread makes you fat?
and a lot of musical cues and aids.
What you ladies listen to?
Queen.
For Wright and his editors, one of the main elements is using music to follow the visual sequences. When speaking to The Guardian with regards to Scott Pilgrim, Wright said, "Music was always going to play a huge part in making the movie. It's about bands and indie rock and young people, so it was never ever going to be an afterthought." The film to initially highlight Wright's style was Hot Fuzz, released in 2007. Written to be a spoof of cop dramas such as Point Break and Bad Boys, the film follows Sergeant Nicholas Angel and his goofy partner, Danny Butterman, in a thrilled action comedy. Quick jump cuts and speedy wipe transitions are placed throughout the film, accompanied by a fitting soundtrack which plays homage to the police film Origin. For this style to work with the narrative, Wright had to closely communicate with his lead editor, Chris Dickens, and additional editor, Jonathan Amos. Dickens' interview with Olivia Peters highlights that Hot Fuzz used sound in a very stylised way because it is a comedy. "I initially did a lot of sound editing when I started in the business, so sound has been very important to me. I love to intertwine music and sound effects to create a soup that is very atmospheric, so you can't tell the difference between the music and the effects." The culmination of Dickens' editing skills and understanding audio cues, along with Wright's vision, make for a narrative that adds depth with the musical additions. For the audience, sound can nicely break up the film into segments without having to abruptly interrupt the plot. Music and montage will always go hand in hand, and Dickens knows just how to marry it.
That was being childish.
Another more recent example is Baby Driver, released in 2017. The editors for this film were Paul Matchliss and Jonathan Amos.
That was probably the best editing month of my life, putting that sequence together. And I had a big smile every single day.
When you're editing and you think, okay, I like that shot. Oh, gosh, it'd be better if it was just three. If I knock 3 frames off it, it'll be great. But you can't. Well, if you do, you then realise that actually the track is the track. You can't just take 3 frames out of bell bottoms because then the music doesn't. So you go, okay, if I don't, so 3 frames have got to go somewhere else because then that section's going to come out. Because there were anchor points all through that sequence. There would be a snare drum roll, a guitar. You had to be at a certain point, and you were fixed.
The film is based off the music video for Blue Song by Mint Royale, which Wright directed. So music had to be a #1 priority in order to tie it to the original idea. Key sequences within the film are stylised to look like music videos, with all of the action being cut in time to the soundtrack. The editors have also chosen to integrate the sound of the scene with the soundtrack, meaning all fast-paced cuts are synced up to the beat of the song. Often soundtracks play an important part in films, but specifically for Baby Driver, it links to both the plot and synchronising the action to music. Matchliss and Amos clearly spent an enormous amount of time working with the edit, leading to the film winning a BAFTA for editing and 3 Oscar nominations. Overall, it's clear that Wright and his team of editors pride themselves on their high level of editing skills. Sound and visuals go hand in hand in all of his films, and these examples are no exception. The visual pacing plays like a high-tempo drum fill with such uniqueness that seeing any of his work smash across the screen, it's impossible not to know who's behind it. That is why Edgar Wright, along with Dickens, Amos and Matchliss, are some of the most important and distinctive filmmakers of our generation.
Come on, once more. 5, 6. Yeah, boy.